councillors. Any words of our lips and meditations of our hearts, we always accept on our side. Welcome everybody. We have an apology from Councillor Dipros this evening. So move straight on to 1.1, authority for a special meeting. Can we have somebody move?
So moved, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Carpenter. Seconded, Councillor Viney. Put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Motion is carried. Just a reminder to speak up to your mics, everybody. Please make sure that you're speaking to them. 1.2 is declarations of interest. Anybody wishing to declare an interest? 2.1 is Council acting as a planning authority. Can I have somebody move that be received? Thanks, Councillor Hiscott. Second, Councillor Beswick. Put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. On to 2.2, which is a residential subdivision to form 79 lots at 18, 27 and 28 Parsons Street in Alveston. There's a report there. Somebody like to move the suggested resolution?
Yes, Mayor, I would.
Thanks, Councillor Van Rowan. A seconder, please. Councillor Hiscott. Councillor Van Rowan, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. I think that this is a very welcome development in our municipality. There is a shortage of building blocks, particularly in Alveston. I'm not sure about Penrith, but certainly in Alveston. And this will be quite a big development, 70 odd blocks. The land is zoned to general residential, so the zoning is correct. I'm really impressed with the report that the developers have put into the council. There's no stone unturned. I mean, flood mitigation reports, traffic counts, and everything else. You know, we sure ask these developers to jump over logs when they put in an application. Not us, it's the system. But in the main, it's necessary because we need to know that flood mitigation, for example, will work in that area. And from the report that I've read, I think it will be an excellent piece of infrastructure. I do have some sympathy with the people in Parsons Street because, as it is mentioned, it's the only road in there, the only road out at the moment. However, the development will be staged, stage 1, 2, 3 and 4. And the developers are well aware that it would be excellent to have a road coming in from Main Street. They have had discussions with the property owner, but that's come to naught at this stage. But because the development is in stages, it is quite possible that down the track they may be able to negotiate on that parcel of land, and we could still finish up with an access onto Main Street. I was invited to go out and have a look at it with the developer, the property with the developer. Look, you know, there's a few other issues. He seemed to be a little bit unclear so far as the application of payment in lieu of public open space is concerned, and I think he's been in to see the director about that this afternoon. He tells me that that could be talked about after this has been approved. And so, you know, I would recommend the development to council. It will be a great asset to the town, particularly at the moment. It'll provide work for builders and contractors and everything else in the immediate future. And so, yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I reckon it's pretty good.
Any other speakers? Councillor Viney.
Yes, I'd like to support the motion. I think it's a great use of the zone as a residential type zone. Been looking forward to something going on with this piece of land for years, having been brought up in that area. once again, flood mitigation was my only concern or my major concern with the project, and that seems to have been dealt with sufficiently by Pitt and Sherry, so I'll be voting in support of the motion.
Any other speakers? Councillor Beazley.
Thanks, Mayor. As the other speakers have said, it'll be great to have another large subdivision. In Ulverstone, there are not a lot of good level blocks of land around the town left for sale now, and to have another subdivision of this lot is only going to benefit our town to grow, which helps support the local businesses. And as has been mentioned, the building industry, the construction industry, as far as roads, infrastructure, and all those sort of things go. One thing, and it's something that we are working through as a council, is our cycle path network. I'd perhaps like to see us look at perhaps a spine considering it's a substantial subdivision of a reasonable width path for a route to link up with some of our other pathways that are going to be formed. We get one chance at this, other than that you've got to go and retrofit, which is something that we could perhaps consider in some of the stages. But I'll be supporting the motion tonight. I look forward to it going ahead.
Any other speakers? Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Mayor, and agree with Councillor Beswick in relation to the pathway. I suppose a revenue or resource that we have at our availability as part of this, however it comes. That's 79 lots. That's a lot of families in a little area where there's already quite an intensive group of families. So that contribution will allow us to consider really well and thoroughly and strategically over a period of time how that contribution is best spent as far as providing access and improving the area for all of those that live there. Having lived in the immediate area, then as with others, my concern was the flooding. The containment of the waterways seems to be satisfactory to all the experts, and I suppose for myself, it is an opportunity in that water infrastructure that's going to be built to. I don't know how you would do this, but it struck me as an opportunity to mitigate any of the extra contaminants that travel their way down Buttons Creek and through that waterway from the hinterland and end up at the foreshore. So perhaps now that we're constructing, or there will be constructed a man-made route for that water, wouldn't it be great if we could try and mitigate some of those contaminants that are coming that way and manage that a little bit better before it comes out to Buttons Creek. So food for thought, but I'll be supporting the application. And as Councillor Van Rooyen said, certainly some compassion for the residents of Parsons Street. They've been used to that environment as it is for many, many years, and it will certainly be different. But no reason to not approve what is in front of us tonight.
Any other speakers?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, no, totally concur with all the previous councillors. Just a question on liability of the flood channel when it's handed over. Have we ever given, not very often, the Central Coast a place in these circumstances where there could be impact of floods on a large residential lot down the track? Have we ever given any thought what our upkeep charges might be going into the future? Question. Out of curiosity, because I'm not opposing the subdivision in any way, shape or form, but if you look at Launceston, over the current decade or two, with all their flood issue problems and building of levee banks and all this, that and everything else. And remember, the report is only a model. And if it does happen to break or overflow or do whatever, I would believe that we would be liable to immediately fix things. So my question would be, I think we should be looking at putting something in the long-term financial plan going forward. Make sure we cover any shortfall in the future.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The the modeling's been done which suggests that there won't be an impact because that's what the channel is being built for. That's probably, you'd have to deal with that if it was to occur. I don't think you could preempt and say that because the modelling that's been submitted as part of the application clearly indicates that that channel will be sufficient to deal with the types of events that occur in Central Coast. So if it was to occur, you're correct, it would basically fall back onto the council at some stage in the future to address that. But obviously the maintenance and the costs of looking after the channel and making sure that it remains in a very serviceable condition will be our council responsibility. But you're getting the extra income from rates to be able to deal with that. And you would need to, you wouldn't be putting something into a long-term financial plan unless you knew it was going to be an issue. That would be, wouldn't be wise.
Yeah, just before I finish, I can concur with Councillor Ford because we often hear or see the trouble that contaminants from further up Buttons Creek causes at the mouth of the river, and whether there's a chance to put a settling pond in or something, or an offshoot pond where we can trap stuff and then it flows around and comes back in, it probably it is really worth considering to fix the problems we often hear about, or often get reported about the stagnant water in the Buttons Creek, and this, and it's all caused through fertiliser wash off or this wash off or and that sort of stuff. There might be an opportunity, and if there is, this would be one place where we could put it, clean it out, and probably because you've got that 6 metre zone to get down into it if we had a settling pond type system. So it is worth the thought.
3 metres, just on that, that's obviously not part of the planning authority's considerations unless you wanted to include some sort of condition, but certainly that's something that the council could consider at some stage as well.
Keep it under consideration.
Any other speakers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to say I fully support this motion and I concur with what everyone else has said. But I support this because I think a development like this will be very good for our town, for jobs, for the business community, and we've got to have things like this happening to see our area grow. And I fully support all of that. Thank you, ma'am.
Any other speakers? Can I just ask the concern about the payment in lieu of the public open space? What was their concern?
I think it's more to do with the quantum. This is an unknown amount at the moment. It's in line with council's policy. The developer did come in this afternoon and speak with me briefly. I've outlined to him that the condition is council policy, that depending on the outcome of tonight, if the permit is approved, he would have the option, if he's not satisfied, if he's not happy with that condition, to appeal. If he wanted to, he also has under the policy an option to make a representation to the general manager for consideration as to some sort of relief. And the third, it's not really a third option, but the valuation is done independent of council. It's done by an independent valuer, and it's very hard to actually work out exactly what the figure will be until such time as the blocks are prepared and ready for sale. So it is a matter that he could potentially deal with through that process, but under council's policy.
Could I ask a question in regards to that, Nick?
Yes.
Just with that, Paul, isn't it the unimproved value of each lot?
It's the unimproved value of each lot. It's not the, but it is on each lot.
That's right, but wouldn't that not include the roads and the infrastructure?
That's when it comes to the valuation.
Yes.
The valuer needs to take into consideration the costs of the preparation of subdivision and those sort of things, and take those sort of costs out. And that's part of that's why it's very hard to say now what is going to be the quantum of the public open space that's going to be required.
Everybody's chance to speak. I'm really in favour of this. I think it's going to be a really good subdivision. I'll have a look at, when you have a look at the plan and what they've tried to do there, I think they've covered all of the bases. I think they've put all of the work in, and I certainly support it. Councillor Van Roen, would you like to close?
Yes, Mayor. Look, there's a number of issues that have been, as part of the flood mitigation process, they would be cleaning out the creek. There are a lot of dead trees in the creek, and in times of flooding, they restrict the flow of water, and so the creek will be cleaned out, it tells me. Also, in the strip between the subdivision and the creek, he's hoping to develop walking tracks, which would be a benefit for the people, and he was hoping that any payment in lieu of public open space could be used exactly on that subdivision rather than it going somewhere else. He was a little bit, how can I say, a little bit concerned that our public open space policy relates to each individual block. He tells me that in Devonport that's not the case. In Devonport it's the unimproved value of the subdivision even before the blocks are put in. Is that correct? No. And he said, well, why should you fellas be in a different? Well, we're a different council. So, there's a few issues there that can be talked about and ironed out. I'm pleased that one end of Parsons Street is to be widened, so that'll help with the traffic flow. But in the long term, it would be ideal if we could come through to Main Street. I'll recommend the motion.
Yeah, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Move on to 2.3, which is a residential outbuilding shed at 114 Leaven Street. We'll have somebody move the suggested resolution. Thank you, Councillor Beswick. Second, Councillor Fuller. Councillor Beswick, would you like to speak to this one?
Yes, Mayor. I see this is a reasonably straightforward application that people have put in a modest sized shed compared to some of the other ones that we've had put in recently. It's got a shed wall height of only 2.4 metres. It's 2 odd metres inside the rear boundary. I appreciate that there's been an objection received from the people to the south because of an outbuilding that they've, or not necessarily an outbuilding, but an extension that they've done to their premises, which has taken their dwelling and outdoor area well into the area which is outside their normal setback. So naturally this has got a slight impact, but I think it is a slight impact. I don't think the shading would really be much different in this instance to a 1.8 metre high fence. I've seen some applications where they actually show the shading of a 1.8 metre high fence to sort of prove up that it is actually, the new building isn't actually shading hard anymore. So taking that into consideration, I still think it's fair and reasonable that we approve this outbuilding.
Any other speakers? I just wondered, with the size of the block and the size of the available space on that block, why the shed wasn't just put back to the right boundary, because it seemed to me there's plenty of room. I understand why you do it when you squash it for space, but I just wondered why it was that.
You asked me a question.
Well, I'm not asking you the question, no, but unless there's a good, it didn't seem like there was, I didn't have the reason why they would do that, why we're being asked to give that.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't think, no, I don't know the reason either.
No. I do think sometimes people could build to the specifications and the regulations and keep people happy. But I agree, in this case, it probably wouldn't make that much difference to the shading, so I'm not going to vote against it. It would be just nice to see that they try to secure those setbacks when possible. Other speakers? Councillor Beasley, did you comment?
I'll probably clarify a couple of those items there. Unfortunately, the planning experience got altered a few years ago where sheds used to be able to be on a boundary, whereas it got altered to the shed had to be 4.5 metres off a boundary, which has caused some grief for a lot of people over the years, unfortunately. I do believe probably, and I suppose I can ask a question of the planning officer, may I?
Yes.
The building extension on the property behind, they would have had to get discretion for that extension, would they not?
Yeah, they have a permit for that extension, yes.
Was it discretionary or
Um,
because they would have been?
they would have been closer to the rear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so based on that,
It's a multiple dwelling.
Yeah. based on that, the people directly behind have gone outside their building envelope as well. So we've sort of got two instances where that property is probably closer to the boundary than what this one that the proponent has put forward is. Just a clarification from my history. So I just close.
All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Motion's carried. Comes to 2.4, community meeting and entertainment, change of use from resource development barn to function centre at 886 Iron Cliff Road, Penguin. There's a report there. Can I have somebody suggest, move the suggested resolution?
So moved, Mayor.
Thanks, councillor Carpenter. Second, councillor Fuller. Councillor Carpenter, would you like to speak to this?
Mayor, it's a fairly intensive report on this one, and I'm only going to speak on the fact that it's after a change of use, and the fact that this building's been put there through its last permit. And to me, I think it meets the criteria for a change of use for a function centre, especially on setback and lighting, and you could even argue to the extent where the noise, when you look at the existing residents around them, are more than you would believe many metres away from this function centre. If you think as a function centre, lighting, traffic and noise would probably be the major three hurdles that you've got to overcome. So lighting can be turned southwards or westwards, away from everybody else or to the ground. The noise, again, even though we can't address that through the planning here tonight, I think that can also be addressed. I do feel for the residents of Ferndean and the road. I really do see their concerns on that issue. But to me, I think when a person wants to be innovative and creative and try and survive in a rural area and innovate his farm to another degree, I don't think it's his responsibility to provide the road to get all the way into there. If you traverse the road, and I feel that the road could really be a dangerous place once this function centre gets up and gets running. Even though we say it's 4.5 metres and our traffic impact study says it's okay, it's the verge of the road and the drop off of the road. It's not, for me, in anyone's eyes, if you have two people passing there at any speed, it's not safe. Perhaps, again, we couldn't put a permit on the applicant. As, perhaps there should be some place in there where we apply for a speed limit on that road, for an immediate reduction to speed could make it safe, because we do know that there is a lot of people visit this site on certain occasions, on some of these functions. And I think, to be fair, Mayor, if our mountain bike trails get up and get started, and I look down through there and we allow a maximum of 250, it's one of the permit conditions. I find that hard on the applicant also. If the mountain bike trails really do get up to its capacity, you could find 500 or 600 or 1,000 people traversing that road in one given day. And I don't see there'd be any permits put on them to say there's only allowed 100 up the road or 250 up the road at any given time. In this instance, in this case, when it's our responsibility. if we want economic growth and we want innovation, we've got to provide the services, I believe, to allow people to get to these areas. For a long time, we've been talking about the dial range being available to everybody. This function centre would open that up as well as the mountain bike park. That's what we wanted to do. I shouldn't mention the mountain bike park, but to me, it's all as one. It's increasing the knowledge, or people have the knowledge of that area now and how beautiful it can be and why they want to be there. And if you look at the neighbours on the other side, and their Rustic Hut, award-winning accommodation, set it beautifully in the bush, facing towards the dial range, absolutely fantastic. Down the track, this could be another award-winning type centre, I don't know. But people love to get out of town. It's only 5 or 6 kilometres out of town, it's only 10 minutes, but they're out of town, they're in nature, they're in the bush. So I give it a lot of credit to the applicant here to be innovative, to be forward-thinking when we saw his rural business sliding through COVID and other things, to start another venture in this. And you could argue, you could stand up and argue, Mayor, that it is using rural resource to further improve his cider, his apples off his cider and his pork through the function centre. So I do even think it's subservient to actual rural land. It can be part of your agricultural business and not separate to that. So I think there's a part in their report we've probably got a little bit wrong from their plans. I would see it the other way, but again, that's only my interpretation. But Mayor, I would recommend that councillors view this and view it for what it is, and it is a change of use. It's not for a building permit, and recommend it go through.
Any other speakers? Councillor Hiskett.
Thank you, Mayor. Agreeing with a lot of what Councillor Carpenter has the weekend, and have briefly been up and stayed at Rustic Hut as well, and that road does have some concerns for me as well. I've sort of thought about this as being a function centre. It does lend itself to a lot of cars travelling one way and then a lot of cars travelling the other way, but not often at the same time. So the passing of cars wouldn't be as prevalent was the thought. And the traffic impact assessment does address a lot of the concerns there too. But I also agree that is an area that is definitely worth looking at for future development, whether through speed limits or through increasing the verges where it's possible. Also, of the use of the agricultural land, it is. I would also note that statement that this does form part of that function centre, is part of his use of that land as an agricultural thing. I can also see this being as you said, an award-winning venue. It has concerned me the way it's come about to this position. It seems like that wasn't intent, and I have to raise that. But judging on the application for us, I can't see any reason or need to refuse it, and would be voting in support of it. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Mayor, and some interesting comments there, and I also had the same thought as Councillor Carpenter about it being, it is consistent with the other activities that he's producing on that land. The point that I would like to focus on is in relation to the road. This for me provides more of a requirement, if we ever needed one, to discuss as a council rather than a planning authority this evening about our intent on that road and our partnership with the state to make that road what it should be. We want people to go to the dial. We want people to go up there safely. We want people of all access levels to be able to take their vehicles up there, even if they don't get out and walk the mountain, to be able to go and park up there and to enjoy that. And we want the school buses to go up there. We want people from this region, from this state, and from all around the world, when it allows, to come and enjoy that very special part of the world. It is time we did something with that road. And if we needed a bit of a kick along to do it, this little application here will be a good kick along to reinvigorate me to work with the rest of you to see if we can get a better outcome for that. But yes, change of use. I applaud the vision of the property owners, and I'll be supporting the application.
Other speakers? Councillor
Mayor, I'm not going to vote against it. I think it'll be probably a welcome addition to the tourist scene in the municipality, but what's going through my mind is that the project has been recommended for approval. I don't have enough arguments to vote against it, but what goes through my mind is that it's rural resource land, or under the new planning scheme, agriculture land. You know as well as I do that over the years we've had to fight to get people to give people permission to build a dwelling on agricultural land. There are lots of blocks in the town. We've just been right through our planning scheme here a while ago that I could identify as ideal places to live. But because it's zoned agriculture, can't put a house on. So you can't put a house on it, but you can put a 250 person, what's it going to be called? Well, reception centre or whatever it's going to be. So there's an anomaly there in our planning scheme. I would like to see many more people move into the country areas. They maintain services in the local area. The schools have a chance of staying open. You know, the population in the country areas has already declined a lot in the last 20 years. And where there are useless bits of land that cannot be used for large-scale agriculture, which is what agriculture is today. You don't have a little grey Fergie anymore. You have a whopping big four-wheel drive with a big harvester on the end. But can't give them permission, but they can build a 250 people function centre. So I've got a few difficulties with that, but I am going to support.
Thank you. Other speakers?
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. I support everybody else's opinions on as far as the innovation that the proponent has up there. Like, he's done a great job with what he's done. I'm disappointed in the way that this has come through as a retrospective application. I think it's unfair on the residents. One of them says in their letter that the original application was put in as a barn. Having seen the documents that went in, the final documents went in for building approval, ended up not being, yes, it was the same size in floor area, a little bit higher, but didn't look anything like the original application. It sort of, to me, has muddied the waters for the neighbours and that, which I think has been a bit unfair. I suppose something that we can learn as a council from this is that we should check the applications when they come from the building surveyor with their certificate of likely compliance, that before the council issues the building permit, that they just have to scan over the plans to make sure that they are still similar to what there was, because I think that would have picked up then that it needed to go out for advertising. As in the previous, in the original planning application, a barn is as of right, whereas an entertainment area, an entertainment function centre for that area isn't as of right. As I say, that's more a technical side of things. I support, as I say, the innovation and what the proponent is more what everybody else has said about the roads. In the end, I suppose by approving something like this, though, we are creating an issue ourselves, which I know is going to be dealt with, but then it comes to the rest of the ratepayers' expense. But yeah, I will be supporting it, but I've got a bit of grievance with the way that it was handled by the proponent.
Any other speakers? Councillor Barney.
Yes, I'll be supporting the application. Like the others, I'm a bit concerned about the road going up there, and also the matter in respect of the change of use of the building. However, this application that's in front of us, I think, meets all our planning, and I think we should accept the application.
Any other speakers? Councillor Carpenter, would you like to close?
Thanks, Mayor. It was an interesting discussion, and sometimes it takes developments in certain areas to get other things to move. And I take on point Councillor Van Ruan's concerns, as we spoke about over many years, trying to change that going forward. And I think there is some problems within our planning scheme, but that's another topic. And Councillor Fuller with the roads, and every other councillor with the roads. It will be a concern. I think we could all honestly sit here tonight and say, if this function centre does work to the capacity and to the level that the proponent would see it working, we could honestly sit here tonight and say the road will become a concern. And I think if we don't address that issue and respect all the representatives' concerns of the road, we've got our heads in the sand. And we need these types of innovation, these types of applications to make ourselves think, well, hey, okay, some of these roads are not quite up to standard what people believe they should be for the future going forward. So when we do something, we do it for the next 40 and 50 and 60 years. And yes, it will be at ratepayers' expense, Mayor. That road is ever improved, but it will be for everybody. And it'll be done for the next generations to come. As a council, I think that's how we should do that. But I'm glad every councillor has spoken in favour of this. I think it's a great innovation. It's a great use of land and getting people to the country, getting people into the lower range is what we want to open up. And this will be a good start. Recommend it.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion's carried. 2.5 has been withdrawn from this meeting, so that brings our meeting to a close. 3.1 is that meeting closed to the public.
Close the top of the road and said,
You've got a shot coming to you.